To get to the moon, you need a rocket, this rocket, the biggest yet built, Saturn V, or Super Saturn. It's taller than Nelson's Column and fully fueled, heavier than a destroyer. It could put into orbit 135 tons, equal to 18 double-decker buses. The rocket is built in 3 pieces. This, the first stage, is built in Alabama. The second bit is made in Los Angeles. The third is made at Santa Monica, California. Each section has to be rigorously tested. Only last week, one section blew to bits. This and the Apollo disaster made it a black week for the moon program. These engines generate 7.5 million pounds of thrust, and they consume 3 tons of fuel a second. Bringing these colossal bits of rocket together is a major problem. Some of it is moved by road. Some comes by river. This space-age version of a Mississippi ferryboat is taking the bottom bit of the rocket, twice the length of a cricket pitch, down the Ohio, Tennessee and Mississippi rivers, then round the coast of America to Cape Kennedy. By road, by water, even by air. This aeroplane, sawn in half and nicknamed the Pregnant Guppy after the fish, is the biggest aeroplane ever built. It had to be specially adapted to take a piece of ironmongery weighing 48 tons, probably the bulkiest cargo ever carried. They tightened the bolts to hold the whole thing together for takeoff. To assemble this huge moon rocket, America has built Moonport. Once Florida swampland riddled with rattlesnakes, it's been turned into the 8th wonder of the world. Here, everything is larger than life. The world's biggest building, for instance. It's in here that the giant moon rockets are assembled, stacked up section on section like a child's construction toy. The building is large enough to hold 2 Buckingham Palaces with room to spare, and you could play 7 football matches side by side on its floor. If it weren't for the air conditioning, clouds would form in the ceiling. It's that tall. The door alone weighs 430 tons and takes an hour to open. To hold the sections of moon rocket upright while they're bolted together, Moonport uses these giant gantries. I've been up one of these gantries and it's a hair-raising experience. At the top you can see for 40 miles. Well, how do you move 5,000 tons of rocket and gantry to the firing pad? Answer: the crawler. Like everything else at Moonport, it's the world's biggest. The world's biggest moving vehicle. The crawler picks up the whole rocket and balances it like a gigantic billiard cue. Each link in these tracks weighs a ton. The crawler's got the world's biggest windscreen wiper, 4 feet long, and the world's slowest speedometer, top speed 2 miles an hour. The specially built road will sink 3 inches every time that 5,000 tons moves along. It's a 3-mile journey to the firing pad. 3 miles because if you let a rocket like this off any closer, it would shatter everybody's eardrums. They had to dig a great flame pit to take the searing heat of the rocket's exhaust. And the firing pad itself had to be lined with special fireproof bricks. So much for the rocket. Now for the moonship it will carry. This is America's moonship, Apollo. 45 tons of it, the heaviest spaceship yet. It's never been tested by men in space though. Grissom, White and Chafee were to have taken it up in 3 weeks' time. The moonship is built in 3 bits. This part is where the men travel for most of the journey. Compared with previous spaceships, it's like graduating from a Mini to a Rolls-Royce. There's room to climb out of the spacesuit and sit in shirt sleeves. It was in this bit on a routine ground test that the 3 men died on Friday. There's even a collapsible bed for one of the crew to get some sleep. They'll take it in turns. The moonship has to be built to withstand a land touchdown or a water splashdown. The second part of the moonship is really one big engine. It's this that supplies the power to maneuver into orbit round the moon and power to motor home after it's all over. And finally, the bottom section. That long sloping part is a kind of mobile garage. It's a storage compartment for the Lunar taxi. This is the Lunar taxi, the part which will actually land on the moon while the rest of the spaceship stays circling above. It stands 20 feet tall and weighs 12 tons. 2 of the crew will climb into it and motor the last 100 miles of the journey. The 3rd man will stay aboard the mothership. It's equipped like a miniature scientific laboratory, and for a whole day it'll be home to the men who actually land on the moon. For a moon landing, they need excellent visibility, so they'll land standing up to get the best view. After the equipment, the men. Following last week's disaster, Walter Schirra becomes the first man who'll take the moonship into space, a Navy captain and veteran of 2 space flights. Gordon Cooper is among those tipped for an actual moon landing. He's an Air Force colonel, also with 2 flights under his belt. And another tip, Tom Stafford. Training for a moon mission is an arduous business. You've got to be able to stand the acceleration of that huge rocket. So astronauts condition themselves in this centrifuge, which can put a stress of 30 times the force of gravity on their bodies. A final check on his reflexes. From whirling to wobbling in the rocking chair. This piece of equipment reproduces the terrific buffeting as a rocket blasts skywards. It takes at least 2 years to train an astronaut. And so to this spin training. If the moonship should suddenly go out of control and start spinning like a top, as one of the Gemini spaceships did, you've got to be master of the situation. Shutting the eyes reduces dizziness. Another torture, the treadmill. A new kind of spacesuit has been tailored for going to the moon, and the designers need to know how much energy a lunaut will use inside it, and whether the facepiece is going to steam up. So he has to walk a mile to find out. But it's not all hard work. There is some fun. It's possible to achieve a few minutes of weightlessness by putting an aeroplane into a climb and then a dive, and then letting the men practice inside it. Weightlessness is that feeling of being able to swim up to the ceiling. But like everything else in spaceflight, it takes some getting used to. Landing on the moon is similar to flying a vertical takeoff plane, and so the astronauts practice hovering in this elaborate version of the flying bedstead. What would happen if the engine failed and you had to drop the last few yards onto the moon? This. He's all right, just a bit shaken up. This is an important test because injury on the moon could jeopardize the whole mission. And now, the most blissful bit of training of all, moon walking. The moon is only a 50th of the size of the Earth, and so the gravity there isn't nearly so strong. You lose, in fact, 5/6 of your weight, so it's easy to run, jump, and do all sorts of acrobatics. To simulate the proper feel of walking on the moon, engineers have built this system of pulleys and ropes, which remove most of a man's weight and leave him free to defy gravity as he likes. And so, to blast off. Super Saturn has never yet flown. The first blast off, due in the spring, is crucial. It could end up the same way as this Atlas rocket did. With luck, though, it won't. With luck, it'll be a perfect liftoff. The plan is to use the 3 stages of Saturn V to carry the moonship clear of the atmosphere and at the same time to boost it to a speed of 25,000 miles an hour on man's first real trip to the stars. First, it goes into a parking orbit round the Earth. Then it sets off on its journey to the moon. Suddenly, those garage doors open and reveal the moon taxi. Then the mothership turns round so that they're now nose to nose. Turn the whole craft around again and they're all set for the 240,000-mile journey that'll last 2.5 days. "60 miles above the moon's surface, the Apollo moonship will put itself into another so-called parking orbit. 2 of the men will clamber into the lunar taxi. The taxi descends, hovering as it looks for the smoothest possible landing space. settles, gingerly, gently, safely. It's another crucial point in the mission. Well, what'll the moon be like when they get there? The best idea we've got came from a photograph taken by the American robot Lunar Orbiter. It shows a 150-mile wide panorama of the moon. The mountains in the middle are about 1,000 feet high, and the ones at the top are as big as Snowdon or Ben Nevis. Another robot, Surveyor, gave us this close-up of the moon's soil. It turns out to be rather like the cinders of a running track, soft on top but firm underneath. The moon will be a place of great contrasts, as this drawing shows. Dazzling where the sunlight strikes something, but jet black in the shadows. It's generally rather gloomy because there's no air to scatter the light. Some of the mountains are reckoned to be higher than Mount Everest. At the Lunar Training Center in Texas, scientists have laid out an acre of moon, or rather an acre of what they think the moon is like. Here the astronaut can pick his way among the rocks and the cinders using a white walking stick to steady himself. It's vital that he doesn't fall and puncture his spacesuit. One tear and the pressure would rush out, causing his blood to boil in seconds. So the Lunar will wear a space overcoat made of aluminium foil to protect himself against flying meteorites. The moon is a priceless antique. Because there's no atmosphere, no rain, no wind, it's remained more or less the same since it was formed millions of years ago. So the astronauts have been told to bring back 80 pounds of moon rock for Earthmen to analyze. Each astronaut has to be a geologist as well as a pilot and engineer. The Lunar heads back to his ship. Only one man at a time will take a walk, but each will be outside on his own for about 4 hours. Before they leave, they'll deposit a radio transmitter to signal lunar information back to Earth, and with any luck there'll be live television from the moon too. Before the return journey, a glimpse of home. That's the Earth. Another picture taken by Lunar Orbiter. And this should be the final scene as the second Lunar clambers aboard. Footsteps on the moon, and the taxi prepares to head home with its souvenirs. Ready for blast-off, but a blast-off with a difference. It took an army to get them launched from Earth. Now the two Lunanauts have to do it for themselves, using the bottom half of the taxi as a firing pad. Up to the circling ship, 60 miles above, for the rendezvous. The Gemini program showed that rendezvous between two vehicles in the blackness of outer space was possible. Now Lunanauts train to do it with moonship simulators. The speed and angle of approach have to be perfect. A mistimed contact and everything would start spinning, ruining the Lunanauts' chances of getting back to Earth. they clamber back down the nose to rejoin their colleague. The taxi is jettisoned. It'll stay in orbit around the moon for years. And so back to Earth. But there's another 250,000 miles to go before they can safely dump the propulsion unit. Then they turn around and get ready to fire the braking rockets. To get safely back to ground, they have to hit a corridor in space only 7 miles wide. If they come in too straight, they hit the atmosphere hard and burn up. If they go too wide, they'll whistle past the Earth, never to return. But if all goes well, they'll land safely. With this precious cargo, they're taking no chances, so plenty of parachutes. Finally, splashdown, after a journey of 500,000 miles that will have lasted 7 days.